don't get discouraged by the fact that you're going to get discouraged. That sometimes we were with a couple not too long ago, and they said, we call it low-grade warfare. It's kind of like the schemer, wants to discourage us. We're also having to address issues that perhaps we have not addressed over the years, and so it's going to bring it up and out. And I think you could get really disheartened by that. And the important thing is realize that's just normal. Don't let the defeat you. Okay, just stay with us, and that's just part of the process. And ultimately, it's healthy, but it's not necessarily fun.
We try to help create proper expectations, because sometimes things get worse before they get better. At least it appears that way. We would define it as worse because now we're having an open discussion about issues that in the past we may not have, because we've either put them under the carpet or we're avoiding them because we don't want to have a conflict. But the real advantage to love and respect is in what you share. How can we address the issues that we have in a loving and respectful manner, taking into account the differences that we have as male and female? And I think this is what couples appreciate. Now that we can address issues that we've always wanted to address, but they've always escalated to the point where the issue was no longer the issue, as you point out, because we've been responding on this crazy cycle. Now we're provided tools to help us maybe create a more fair environment where we're maintaining a loving and respectful approach while we're addressing the issues that we need to address, whether it's child rearing, whether it's sexual issues, whether it's money issues, whether it's in-law issues, vacation issues, calendar issues, all the things that couples can, have conflicts about. But now we're doing it in a different format. So it appears in some cases as if things for couples are getting worse before they get better, but it's not actually worse. It's just part of the process of now creating a more helpful and more healthy environment to address the issues that maybe we've been avoiding in the past.
And one of the points that I make is that it really is a skill and a knowledge approach to things. I mean, some people have this idea that relationships should just kind of happen, the chemistry, the Hollywood approach, that, we just fall in love and it's easy. That just isn't the way any of the research points it out. That doesn't reflect any relationship on the planet, that there is going to be tension because we look at it through a pink and blue thing, and neither one are wrong, just different. And there's not ill will. We just look at things differently. And so there is a skill to this. There is a knowledge. And once we have that skill, once we have that knowledge, things begin to move in a good direction. But guess what? As was just referenced, we have these moments of conflict and we get a little discouraged. But actually that's healthy, because now we're at a point where, am I going to apply the skill? Am I going to apply the knowledge? Am I going to say, okay, if I say this in a more loving way to her, she's probably not going to be as reactionary. If I say to him, I'm not trying to say this disrespectfully. How do I say this in a way that you don't think I'm trying to diss you? We introduce this knowledge. We practice the skill. Then it starts moving forward. But if you don't have an opportunity to practice the skill or apply the knowledge, what good is it? So, and then what is it that's going to give me the incentive to apply the skill or knowledge? I got to have a conflict. I got to have a problem, and so we need to see the deeper wisdom of this. But at the moment in time, we're thinking, man, this isn't working. No, you're right on schedule. And that's something we can say to people in a small group as well. Don't get discouraged here. This is really healthy. We need moments where we're going to say to ourselves, am I going to apply this and do it differently? Or, because we say, if you keep doing things the way you've always done them, you're going to keep getting the same results you've always had. So there comes a moment where we've got to introduce a little bit of a change, and that's not always comfortable, but that's normal, and it's not abnormal. So we need to encourage you. You need to encourage people that, hey, this is just part of the process.
And a lot of couples say how they are enriched by leading it. Before they were maybe just participating and they were getting it, they were having the momentum of change. But now, since they are leading, they say it's a totally different ballgame. It's they are enriched, they are kind of more practicing, they're learning from the other couples. So they say, we want to do that more because this keeps our relationship fresh.
Huge opportunity. That's exactly right. I mean, we all know as adults that if you teach something it really puts you in a position to have to engage in that content in a way that you wouldn't if you're just sitting passively listening. So it really is to your advantage to really lead this, because it's going to be so helpful to you. At the same time, it's going to create a tension, and that's all right. Don't run from it. Let's just all be in this together. We're a team, shoulder to shoulder, moving forward on this. Any last comments?
Oh yeah, well, there are several other things that are more on practical nature, and I would definitely like to hear from Steve and Barbara what is your experience in Slovenia, and what are the best practices in the United States. But we often get a question about the size of a group. How many couples should we invite? So in our experience, because we have tried many different approaches, so we have one right here in the office that we have about 15 to 20 couples, and that's not a small group, that's a huge group. So our best practice, what has been shown throughout the years, is 4 to 6 couples. If you have less than 4, if you miss 1 or 2 couples, then dynamic just totally changes, and so it's not as good. But if you have more than 6 couples, then you probably have 1 or 2 couples that are maybe hiding and falling through the cracks. They don't actually get to participate as much. So 4 to 6 couples, that's our biggest, that's what we found out that works the best. Even at our last meeting, when we had about 18 couples here at the office, we usually have just big open discussion with all of them. However, this last time we put them in a small groups, and it was a totally different dynamic. It was almost impossible to stop them from talking. They just connected on a totally different level. So, but what are your best experiences? What are your best practices?
Yeah, we would agree with that. I think the optimal is 4 to 6 or 4 to 7 couples is probably an optimal number for there to be kind of create the intimacy or the openness where all couples have an opportunity to share, be involved, create good connections with each other. We don't want to create a seminar type environment. In some cases, depending on where we've been, we've not been able to avoid having a larger number of couples, but they've still benefited from the content, because ultimately what we want to encourage couples to do is to take the tools and the wisdom and the whole ethos, the spirit of love and respect, and to apply it into their own relationship at home. Mm-hmm. Yes, there are dynamics in the small group if there are a smaller number of couples involved that helps enhance that possibility. But even in a larger setting, couples can still take those tools and be encouraged to put them into practice in their own relationship and still experience the benefits of love and respect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we always encourage them to talk about this subject at home. So even in this 14 days period, we send some emails or just kind of follow up with them. Hey, how are you doing? You remember we talked about this and this? You remember there's a good homework on page this and this? Maybe some additional questions for discussion. So they're constantly in this 2-week period, they're kind of still bombarded with the...
We have found that to be a helpful dynamic for our situation. Usually in a relationship, there's usually one of the spouses is more communicative, relationally oriented than the other. In our case, this is Barbara, and she does a lot with correspondence and in writing to the couples as a follow-up email from our last session. Sometimes she interjects some of the things that we talked about in that group, and then she provides a few extra questions for them, and then she'll follow up with another email before our next session, 3 or 4 days beforehand, reminding we're meeting again. Did you have a chance to look at your homework? Take 15 minutes sometime over this weekend over coffee or tea or a walk together to talk about some of the content with each other. So all of that's providing even more impetus for the couples to discuss with each other what it is that they're learning. And it helps focus their conversation, so they're not talking about anything and everything, but it's more focused, and it's providing some real content and boundaries for their conversation. And that automatically provides sort of some new wind into their relationship and encouragement.
Excellent. Any questions of one another or of me, or any more comments on that?
I'm wondering, since you have mentioned this 2-week interval, so how does it function in Slovenia? So how many times do you actually meet, and what's the period?
As you know, the DVD has 6 sessions. There's an introduction and then 6 sessions on the DVD.
Weekly, or like once a week.
Well, initially it's been touted as a 6-week study. We discovered in our context that to do it on a weekly basis is far too intensive. It's too much information for couples to assimilate. And plus the pace of life is so quick today that it's really hard to keep that kind of pace for couples. And so we've created a schedule of doing this on a 14-day basis. So it's twice a month, every 14 days. And the whole session, altogether there are 8. So there's an introductory session where we introduce the couples, we introduce ourselves, we talk a little bit about the dynamics of male and female differences. Then we watch the introduction, the 10-minute introduction that you have on the DVD. And then we follow the next, after that 14-day interval, all of the 6 sessions every 2 weeks. And then the final 8th session is a celebration night where couples receive a certificate for having successfully participated in the Love and Respect small group. And then we ask them to share their experiences. What did you learn? What did you experience in this time frame? And the testimonies are just fantastic. Usually 80% of the time when we ask that question, it's usually the man who responds first, either in writing or he wants to express his appreciation for what this small group dynamic has done for their relationship. And we have found that 14-day interval provides the right kind of tension to keep the emphasis of love and respect at the forefront of their mind and in their relationship together, where things are not too intensive, where they're losing so much of this content, where it's not spread out too long, where that tension is lost and they forget about it, they don't have opportunities to talk about this. It seems to us that 14-day interval holds the right kind of tension for them to get out of the small group study as much as being made available to them.
And continuity, because they have to constantly work on this. And most men says, first they say, oh, of course, I'm so busy, and then say, oh, twice a month. Yeah, we can do that.
Yes, it has a start and it has a finish. I think most men appreciate that. Most women would like the group to continue on. But I think, again, it's another dynamic where men feel that they're being honored, that now they've been given the tools for them to build now and live in their relationship. They're being trusted with this content beyond the 8 times of having meted together, that they're able to do this. And I think it's an honoring thing for the man that there is a start and that there is a finish. They don't feel as though they're having to be babysitted, that they can't do this on a long-term basis on their own with each other. They still might like to have the encouragement after this, but I think there's a real dynamic of feeling honored that they're now being given the tools to be able to operate in their relationship in a more skillful and more loving way.
And maybe why we don't do it once a month.
I mean, one of the reasons why we wouldn't prefer the once a month time frame is that if a couple isn't able to attend for whatever reason, even though they're encouraged from the outset to really make a commitment to attend the group, that's a little bit easier to do, to maintain that commitment where there's a shorter time frame. So with the twice a month time interval, it's 4 months. If it's once a month, it's 8 months, which is a longer period of time, at least I think for most men in their thinking. And if they miss one of the groups in between, that's a 2-month time frame where they've not been engaged with the love and respect content, and you kind of lose the tension that's necessary to kind of massage and incorporate now the culture of love and respect into their relationship. So we would really prefer the 14-day interval. We think is an optimal time frame.
And you had mentioned you have the 8th, which is a celebration. I mean, that's not a mandate. People don't have to do that. But I think for those who perhaps didn't think about that, what you kind of indicated. I mean, it's a wonderful celebration. I mean, it's really kind of it's the cherry on top of the ice cream, sundae, so to speak. But make comment about that. Again, it's not something that people are required to do, but it kind of like ties a knot, doesn't it?
It does. It gives couples the chance themselves to be able to communicate what they've experienced, and as we've said before, what you communicate kind of tends to to stay with you. It kind of puts a dot on the I, it crosses the T, so to speak. We've had several instances where we've had men who've chosen not to share during the time frame of the group. They've been quiet most of the time. And sometimes it gives the impression that maybe he's not tracking, maybe he's not interested, and we've been surprised over and over again when he's given the opportunity now and has been asked to share from them as a couple. He's usually the first one to respond. We had one gentleman who didn't say anything in all of the 7 previous sessions. He was quiet the entire time. He would just shake our hand at the end of each of the sessions and go home with his wife. And on this 8th session, he was the first one to respond, and he shared such a depth from his side with such deep appreciation of what this content meant for him. All of us were surprised, both with his depth that he had been tracking the whole entire time with us, and it reinforces again that men really do care about their relationships far more than it seems that they're letting on. And as you've indicated, when his language is being spoken, when he hears his mother tongue, they are engaged, and it does make quite an impression for them to have an opportunity to share their own impressions at the end of this. And for small group leaders, this for Barbara and I is our favorite time, because it seems as though, okay, we've been the ones kind of giving out or providing a place for other people, but this is a wonderful opportunity for the small group leaders to also hear feedback. What have the couples really learned? What is it that they've experienced? And this provides fuel for us.
Yeah.
We can't wait now to do the next
Let's do another group. This was so good.
Yes.
Even, you're so tired in between sometimes, it's
Right.
like, oh, God, God help us. But when you're hearing their testimonies, their impressions, it gives you, yeah, let's do another one. And we actually send them, before this conclusion, we send them some questions for easier reflection. So they, in most cases, they write it down, they send us free email, or they share there with the group, and this is really fun. And sometimes they want to, maybe somebody in the group plays the guitar or sings, and they like to bring their guitar and make it more festive. Yeah.
Usually it's a little bit more celebrated. We have food and some things that we may not have had. We try to keep the food content as minimal as possible, just so that it's easily repeatable, so that new couples who want to get engaged, that this isn't gonna
pressure.
it's not gonna make a big difference on their budget as well. Just some tea and some peanuts or something of that nature is really simple to be provided. But at this final thing, many couples say, "Oh, can we bring something?" So we kind of make a potluck idea where couples are free to bring some sort of finger food if they want to enhance the whole evening, and it tends to really make a celebrative experience.
And on the other sessions, we try to keep it maximum 2 hours. Because in our culture, people like to talk and talk and talk. So it's hard on the couples who have children, they have babysitters. So we try to officially finish 2 hours.
Hour and 45 minutes to 2 hours at the most.
The most, yeah. So we conclude with prayer, and then we say whoever wants to stay, you can stay, but normally, because their cars are parked, they all leave in most cases. So it's easier on the hosts if they finish.
Sometimes we say, you can stay as long as you want, but Sarah and I are going to bed. Yeah. But you made a couple comments. One, that stoic male who says nothing. As facilitators, sometimes we think, is this getting through? People's body language, particularly if they're silent and they don't do anything, we all feel that they're not getting anything out of this. But I think I've learned over the years, we mustn't presume that in most cases we're completely wrong, that they are processing and they're enjoying. It would be nice if they would tell us that they were, but some people, just simply don't. But over the years, our experience echoes that what you didn't think was going to be a comment like that, suddenly this man at the last session divulges, speaks first, and shares his heart. It's mind-boggling. So it's important that facilitators always have a confidence that this content, in most cases, is going to, make that kind of impact. Now, if one of the people is committing adultery, there's betrayal, we know that there are Judases out there. This is no an absolute guarantee, but if there's any degree of goodwill, this can have tremendous impact. So don't second guess the individual who's silent. I thought too, another comment you made, which is one of those things you can use in promoting why a man should come, is say, hey, there's a beginning and there's an end. You kind of said, it's going to go for 8 weeks. We're going to start, we're going to end. And so now he realizes this is not going to be forever and ever, amen. That, parentally, I'm going to be in this group. So this is super. Anything else as you were listening that you wanted to comment?
As a matter of fact, you mentioned something about the babysitting and just having those 2 hours and then letting couples go back home to take care of the kids. What we have found out is that if you are trying to start a small group and you gather 4 to 6 couples, it is actually good to maybe organize babysitting together. So there are many options now. You can actually hire a babysitter, and so instead of couples trying to find babysitter on their own, you all can hire a babysitter and she can watch or he can watch all the kids together. Sometimes if you have a smaller apartment, and that's the case for most of the people here in our area, there's really not an option for people to bring kids into the home and to have them watch there as you have in group, and we would definitely not recommend that, because kids always meal out of the room and interrupt the discussion and always asking for parents. So always do it at somebody else's apartment. So if there are several couples, just ask one of the couples if they'll be willing to have a babysitter with all the kids there, and so especially if it's close to the meeting space. And then you all can chip in and pay for that, and that way it just makes it easier for the parents. They know that the kids are taken care of, and they can stay maybe even longer if they want to talk about that. But do you have any suggestions? Have you tried anything else in Slovenia that might work, or you just let parents take care of the kids on their own?
Normally, we strongly encourage them to find appropriate babysitting for their children. We try to introduce it in this way because in many cases it's usually the mother who's a little bit apprehensive of leaving their child, particularly if it's very small, with someone else, wondering if this is going to work for them. And you try to strongly encourage them in that direction to try this as a way of now coming apart just for you as a couple apart from the children. And we found it to be quite successful as they've attempted to do so. It's brought a fresh wind into their relationship by finding someone, either a grandparent or a friend or another couple, to watch their child while the two of them attend the group together.
And now some, because they prove themselves that they can take every 2 weeks a time just for the two of them, even when the course is finished. We say, well, now you see that you can go out without children and provide a babysitter and have a fun time together. So they're continuing. Even even like we have Mondays and Tuesdays, just one couple, after a year of finishing this course, he wrote to us, we're continuing. Every other Tuesday, we have a time just for ourselves, like you suggested. And because normally we mothers, we care, we think, can we do this? And maybe a husband invites her out and she says, well, we can't really do this. But now they prove themselves that they can do this and it's fun and the children are not lacking anything. They actually enjoy being with other parents in most cases. And we just have one couple, they're having a year-old girl, and she was worrying how this will work. Will the mother-in-law be the right one? She's not sleeping. So I just kind of encouraged her, well, maybe you want to try and come to the course, to the first, and you see how that works. And she was surprised when she came home that the grandma put the baby to sleep and it was no problems, and now they're continuing going to the course, which before was like, I'm not sure if we can do this, maybe next year we'll join, but they tried and see it worked.